Cool. So thank you everyone for joining. This is another one of the Data Dragons podcast. Well, really live discussions, and we do this about every week, every second week, and we basically just run through data and tech and software development, as well as some social issues. There's next coming up, we've got another data visualization challenge, which is this time we're focusing on global gender equity. So I will just be posting a little bit about that at the end. But yeah, the structure is pretty simple. We just go through some quick Q&A with Bulumko today, who is our fantastic guest speaker. And then there's also time for Q&A. So if anytime you've got any questions, you can just throw them in the chat, or there will be promptings for questions. Yes, so let's get into it. First of all, thank you so much for joining Bulumko. It is just so fantastic to have you on. You have a really interesting journey, but I just wanted to know, can you please describe, like in a nutshell, what do you do now and how did you come to be at this particular place within your career?
Okay, cool. So currently I'm a Webflow developer. Webflow is a no-code tool, even though I tend to code a lot using it just to extend the functionality, but that's a story for another day. So I'm a Webflow developer. I studied at CPUT. I studied multimedia, which is a bit of a generalist qualification. We did a lot of things: design, videography, photography, and web development. Straight after that, I moved into digital marketing. Did a bit of everything: email marketing, paid ads, web development as well. Spent some time also in the online radio space. And yeah, eventually I made my way around back to development and specifically Webflow development. So that's where I am exactly right now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But like, you don't sound like you have a stereotypical software developer background, that you didn't go from like computer science into it. You really went through like multimedia, and then you did these short courses or certifications within JavaScript, CSS, you name it. And I mean, you've even produced an online radio show. Like, I was going through your stuff. It's like insane, all the things you've done. Do you feel that this unconventional background has contributed to a more holistic or a more stronger, or just a stronger developer in general? Do you think you're more attuned to the needs of your clients in some way?
Yeah, I'll definitely say my background has helped me to, I guess, have a holistic sort of like foundation. More importantly, I feel like I know exactly where everything fits in, or I have a better, let me just say, I have a better understanding of where things fit in, right? Because I've dabbled in copywriting, email marketing, so I kind of know everything, how everything fits. It's like, you need to build a website and then you need to get traffic to your website, right? It's pointless having a website up and running, but no one's coming. So how do you get traffic? What do you do? There's SEO, there's paid ads and stuff like that. So being able to, I guess, play in all those different areas has helped me to understand the importance of all those other moving parts. And it's also helped me to understand that when I'm developing something, where it fits in the bigger picture of things, if that makes sense.
That's amazing. And then just to go back to the mini certifications and things, do you find that this has brought you to a place where you're like more committed to upskilling, more committed to like frequently learning new things than someone who had just done a traditional 3 or 4 year degree would have?
Yeah, it's very important. I think in your previous question, you mentioned, does my background help me understand clients better? And it does, because clients come from different industries, they've got different issues, and having sort of like a holistic understanding helps you to really build solutions that help them out, efficiently. So yeah, upskilling is very important. Learning things that are sort of like outside what you do can help as well. I've got certifications in like design thinking and stuff like that, so that's definitely helped me to be a better developer. So I'd definitely advise, especially young developers, just, in your free time, obviously, like just learn something that's not really related to what you do exactly.
I think that might be like the hot tip of today. Learn something that's not directly related to what you do.
Yeah.
Okay. Part of the reason I reached out to is that you are just so passionate about assisting young developers in achieving employment. And it's something that I see really on your LinkedIn profile, just everywhere. What is that motivating factor that drives you or that drew you to this?
So it's a couple of things. The first one is, as we all know, we've got a problem with youth employment in our country, specifically in South Africa. And the sad thing is that even when it comes to graduates, that's still a problem. So we still have a lot of graduates who are unemployed, right? So over and above the fact that we've got unemployed young people, we've got unemployed graduates who've gone to school, who have computer science degrees and whatever, or IT diplomas, and still can't get a job. So that's where a lot of the motivation comes from. The other thing is, just from my own career, I realized that the learning really starts when you start your first job. It's not to say that everything that you've learned in school is a waste of time, but it's like when you get your first job, that's when everything really starts to stick, and that's when you really start to learn. So the sooner you can get your foot in the door, I think the better it is for you. So I'm passionate about helping young developers get their foot in the door, get their first job, because it can be challenging. Different institutions work differently. Like, for instance, the bootcamp We Think Code. I was speaking to some of the students there. And what they told me is that We Think Code tries to place their students, tries to organize internships, which is amazing. Some bootcamps, some institutions really leave you on your own, so you have to figure it out. So some students don't struggle, when it comes to getting the first job, but then there are others who definitely do struggle. So I'm definitely passionate about helping students who find it difficult to get their first job.
That's so amazing. And I think everyone who's ever worked in anything knows that what you think you know and then what you actually know once you start working are realms apart.
Yeah.
Just completely different. When I look at how you've gone about helping these young developers or young grads, it's always like optimize your LinkedIn profiles, and that's something you continuously discuss within your posts or like mini blogs. Do you have secret tips or tricks or like things that you tell them to do on the sly that help with that?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I've got secret tips, but I've got tips that people aren't aware of, if I can put it that way. But mainly the main thing with profile with optimizing your LinkedIn profile, two things actually, not the main thing. There's two things. Number one, having an optimized profile helps you to be easier to discover, right? So recruiters, hiring managers, when they're looking for talent, your profile will rank higher when they search for keywords that are related to what your profile is about, right? So discoverability is the first thing. If your profile is optimized, it's easier to pick up, and it's easier to discover by recruiters and hiring managers, which is huge, which is massive, because a lot of people get jobs like that on LinkedIn. And this is something that a lot of young developers aren't aware of. All right. Then the second thing is an optimized profile, an optimized LinkedIn profile. It helps to sell you. So when someone gets onto your profile, when your profile is optimized, it helps to sell your skills. It helps to sell what value that you can bring to a potential employer or company, right? And an optimized profile does that in a very clear and in a very concise manner, right? Because a lot of profiles, and we'll probably talk about this, some of the things that I've seen from other profiles, is that things can become very vague and very wordy and very like, I'm not sure what's going on here. So an optimized profile is very clear and very concise. Within 5 seconds, someone will know exactly what this profile is about, right? They know exactly what you do, what skills you've got, and they don't have to spend 10 minutes trying to figure out what's going on. So those are the two sort of like big ideas around the importance of having an optimized LinkedIn profile. And then now to go into like specific tips and tricks. I mean, they're not that intense, but it's like tip number one, like just complete your profile. I've seen so many incomplete profiles. Like, by incomplete profiles, I mean profiles that don't have a cover photo, a background image, right? And that's very important. It's important to have a cover photo because That's a lot of real estate, right? A lot of people either just leave it empty or just put an image or cat photo or dog photo, which is not related to what they do, which is okay, right? But ideally, you want to use that real estate, that space to sell yourself, to sell your skill set, to sell the value that you bring. So on my profile, you'll see it's got my name, it's got my tagline, my tagline or my keyword, which is Webflow developer, and it's got my email address, right? So straight off the bat, you know exactly, okay, this is this guy's name. His name is Bulumko Bullz Papu. He's a Webflow developer, and this is his email address. So that's all in my cover photo, right? So that's huge. That's tip number one. Tip number two is like your headline. So the headline is the piece of text that comes underneath your name. I've seen some horrendous stuff on LinkedIn, and the key thing with that is your headline has to be very clear and very concise. You know, you can't say things. I've seen things like mechanical engineer, business analyst, and data scientist. That doesn't make any sense. Like, what are you? Are you a mechanical engineer? Are you a, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's very confusing. So you've got to be very clear and concise. So my headline is Webflow developer. It's very clear. You know what I mean? If you know what it is, then you know what it is. If you don't, then you're probably gonna move over, which is fine. So having a very clear headline. Examples of a clear headline is software developer. Now I'm speaking to software developers primarily. So software developer, backend developer, full stack developer, Python developer, React developer, maybe for the designers, product designer, UX designer, UX researcher, maybe for the data scientist, data analyst, right? Keep it very short and very sweet. So that's your headline. And then the last tip that I give to young developers is having a very clear and concise about section. That's the part where you get to write about yourself. Now, it's not a good idea to like write an essay that says, my name is Kevin and I'm from Cape Town and I'm passionate about. That's great because now, you know, it's nice to tell a story, but remember, people don't have time online. So you've got to be very clear, concise, and you've got to be very like, get straight to the point. So just a brief intro, and then you've got to list your skills in bullet point form because people are skimming profiles, right? So I tell a lot of young developers, list your skill set. What languages do you know? Java, Spring Boot, PHP, Python, whatever. It's very important to do that. So don't put an essay like writing out a whole story. That's not a good idea because people don't have time to read that. Yeah, so those are the main tips that I give out that definitely help when it comes to having an optimized profile.
That's fascinating. I did not. I know the statistics around how if you have a fully completed profile, I think you're like 70% or something more likely to be hired. But I did not know about the discoverability and things. That was so interesting.
Yeah.
And people putting dog photos as their profile photos. That must be insane. But something that I'm noticing, this must come from your marketing side.
Yeah.
You've almost like perfected it almost sounded like you were discussing branding, not really like building a CV. It sounded more like how do you position yourself within this online labor marketplace, if you will, rather than that. And this must come from your digital marketing, like or multimedia marketing certifications, and with all the copywriting you've done and things. Do you think that this building of a personal brand is the essential piece or like the essential leverage in honing professional opportunities, both for getting your foot in the door, but also for like changing career tracks, etc.?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. And the word that I loved that you used is leverage. I mean, that's what having a personal brand is all about. It gives you leverage. It is something that takes time to build. You're not going to build a personal brand in 2 days, right? It's an ongoing thing. I'm still building mine as well. But I'd like to believe that me having a personal brand that I've been working on somewhat is how I got to be on this amazing platform. So it's really powerful. And I really think that it's not only important to have a personal brand when it comes to getting your first job, but it's important to have a personal brand because it's the gift that will keep on giving you amazing opportunities in your career over the long term. And And another thing that I always say is that having a personal brand is the thing that allows opportunities to come to you, right? In a way, I've got sisters-in-law, my wife's two sisters, who were recruited, and the jobs now that they working, they never applied for these jobs, right? They were recruited off of LinkedIn. That happens a lot. So that's the power of having a personal brand, right? It's over the long term, it's the thing that will help you to attract opportunities that are not visible and that are not accessible to everyone.
I think that is enough. I mean, that is just, yeah, that is the truth of today. Unfortunately, a lot of job opportunities do go to those and are often in secret. So yeah, I mean, anything to assist with that. But recently I've noticed you've been assisting young developers, especially with refining their LinkedIn profiles, and it's an ongoing project. And I know you are promising to share the results via an analysis, and I won't ask you to do everything, but maybe you've spotted an interesting insight or pattern or two that you'd like to just share, if you're allowed to.
Okay, so one huge insight I've noticed is that most young developers don't know who they are, who their target audience is, who they're communicating to. So another thing with profile optimization is you have to know who you're speaking to. So I know I'm speaking my profile. I've made my profile attractive to digital agency owners, right? Company directors who own agencies. Those are the people that normally respond or find me or send me a DM when they see my profile. So one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of young developers don't know where they fit in. They don't know who they're speaking to. Are they speaking to startups? Are they speaking to consulting firms? Are they speaking to agencies? And also, where do they want to work? Where do they see themselves, right? So there's a lot of like vagueness. They're not really sure where they want to go. And it's very important. And I mean, look, obviously I have the benefit of having worked for different companies. So I sort of like have a very clear idea of where I want to be and where I am right now. So that's probably something that will come with time. So I shouldn't be too harsh on them, but it is something that they need to think about. You need to think about who are you communicating to, number one, and what space do you want to play in? Do you want to work for startups? Do you want to work for corporates? And then, so your profile needs to speak to someone to that, it needs to speak to that specific person. You need to use words that will be attractive to that specific target, specific target audience. And then, other things that I picked up are some of the things that I shared, not having a clear headline, not having a cover photo, not having a very clear and concise about section, and then having an incomplete profile. So those are the things that I've spotted.
I think it's so interesting that you say not knowing who you are, because I remember, and I mean, working as a product manager in ed tech, I know how difficult it is just to convince young grads. Most of them just want a job. They're not that interested in what do you mean a startup, a corporate agency. They just want, that first paycheck and to get going. Anyone is better than no one, especially in this country's employment environment. So I think it's very interesting that you're talking about positioning from such an early start of the career process, but it's valuable. I think it will probably help with the hiring process as well. And it's always good to think about these things just so you know where you're going in the future and you plan your career effectively. So I think your advice will be invaluable for these young developers. Okay, before I move on to the no code or low code, I just wanted to ask if there were any audience questions before I move on. I'm going to wait for about count of 5. Okay, cool. I'm going to move on to the no code or low code rather. So something I personally find fascinating, being both a product manager and someone who has worked within analytics and development myself as a developer, it's that you talk about no code first and you almost treat code as a secondary resort. It was a little bit painful for me to hear that. But then you spoke about having to extend the no-code tools earlier because you wanted them to be able to do things that they couldn't offer. Like obviously, having worked with Buildfire and different things like that, I know that they have these great templates, but the templates are limited in what they can offer. And obviously, I mean, you have to integrate with like APIs and various other things. So you do have to have coding knowledge. I mean, you wouldn't have been calling yourself a Webflow developer if you didn't have any coding knowledge. But where do you, especially as I know how precious developer resources are, do you find like a struggle with that, like a pushback from the stakeholder side to your ideas? How comfortable are people hearing that like no code is going to be the first option and then coding will be part two or like maybe later?
Yeah, it's a very contentious issue. And I don't, well, I mean, I obviously have my own opinion. Look, the big thing with low code and no code is the big benefit is speed. Obviously, that's like you can build things that will take normally probably 3 months, 6 months. You can build them in a day or two or a week. But another thing that people are not aware of is that the no code and low code industry, the tools and the platforms are growing. And as such, it's creating a spectrum where on the one end, you've got low fidelity, if I can use that word, low fidelity, no code, low code tools, where you don't have the ability to customize and be precise because that would take too much time. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got sort of like high fidelity, but it's still a no code tool. And that's probably where Bubble, Webflow, that's where Webflow and Bubble come in. And so with those tools, you can be a bit more precise without losing too much of the speed gain, right? So people aren't aware of that because a lot of tools are being built every single day. And I make sure to keep up with everything that's happening because the industry is growing, right? And the industry is growing, and because of that, like I said, the spectrum now is becoming wider. So because of that, it is getting to a point where one I mean, at our current company, we solely use Webflow, even though we like I said, we extend some of the projects that we work on using code. But I do see a point where we'll probably not need to use any code in the future for what we do. But I'm not saying that there's not going to be a need for coding per se, because these tools need to be built by coders, from scratch. So yeah, there is pushback. There is, some clients don't want to. We try to convince clients to jump from, in our case, WordPress to Webflow. That tends to be a challenge sometimes. People really believe in WordPress. WordPress is great, but it's not as great as Webflow, in my personal opinion. So it is a bit of a challenge. And I will say that the international market seems to be ahead of the curve when it comes to this. I think in South Africa we're still a bit behind, but I guess that's just normally how things go here. But in time, I think we'll catch up. So yeah, it's contentious, but I believe that soon things will make more sense to a lot of people why it's beneficial to use no code and low code.
As a product manager, I do understand. I mean, you have a very short amount of time in which you have to prototype and test and check whether or not it's actually the right thing, and then get user feedback. But just this process of crafting the solution, I imagine that you have like a week or so to get this website up and running, and or web application rather up and running. And you mentioned Webflow. I only really know about Bubble, but I assume they're pretty similar tools. And then, so you've got this no platform provider. How fast do you move, and how, like, because you're building such a beautiful thing, whereas with code, you would start off with wireframing and then go to develop, and then it would take multiple iterations to get something that looks half decent. How tempted are the stakeholders to just be like, okay, cool, it's done. No, we don't want to test, it's done. Stop.
Yeah, it's tricky. I will say, although okay, so this is something that's specific and particular to us. We use Webflow, but we use Webflow in a very traditional way, if I can put it that way. So we still design wireframes from scratch, and then get the client to sign off on the wireframes and the mockups, and then from that, then we develop everything in Webflow. So we still operate in a very traditional way. We don't go straight into Webflow and build out everything straight from there. So I think that also helps our clients to, be more comfortable with the process, because then the process is familiar to them or more familiar. So I think that's what makes us a bit unique in our agency at the moment. But I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, because I think that at least you have demarcations. It is, I imagined it would be quite difficult if you just immediately start showing them an interactive screen and they're like, wow, it's finished already. If you at least had these breaks, then they'll be able to see that it more is a moving part and there's a process that will take time in order to get to the right product. The right product, and see that they might have to do iterations based on customer feedback or based on something that's not working. They might see that their concept is flawed somewhere or something like that. So what you're doing is great, really, it is. Okay. I'm going to do the rapid fire questions now. So just to explain this to you, Bulumko, these are 5 questions. No matter what way you answer them, it's going to be perfect. This is all your own opinion, and they are not serious. Most of them are related to tech, but some are just my curiosity, and it's something I ask every time just to check how people are feeling within the industry. It's okay. Whatever you say is chill, bro.
All right.
Cool. So, favorite snack to eat while coding or working in general?
Peanuts. Salted peanuts with raisins.
Do you work best in the mornings or the evenings?
Mornings, early mornings, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning.
We are the same. Okay. Do you code or work best in silence with lo-fi beats or like non-wordy type beats, or with like rap?
I can't. When there's words in music, I get thrown off. And I'm a jazz head, so I listen to a lot of instrumental jazz. So for me, it's jazz. And what is the other part of the question?
Just like, do you code or work best with like music or with like silence or like that kind of thing?
It depends. If I'm problem solving, then I can't listen to music. I need to like hone in. If I'm I'm trying to figure out a bug, why this button's not working, why this slider's not sliding. So then I can't listen to music. But if I'm just doing just normal stuff, like just updating a page or whatever, then I can listen to music. So it depends on what I'm doing exactly.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Apply updates now or remind me later. What's your preference?
Apply updates now or remind me later. What is this with regards to?
So when your computer tells you must update now, do you say snooze, or you go like, okay, cool, I don't procrastinate for nothing?
Oh no, later. Let's do it later, guys.
Okay, and then finally, how often do you leave your Teams Slack messages or like Teams messages on read?
Not too often, but I'd probably, I don't know, because I'd have to ask my team members. I try to answer. Again, it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm really trying to sort out something, then I won't be able to attend to any Slack messages. So yeah, it really depends. I'd like to think I'm average, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it does. All right. Well then, thank you so much, Bulumko. That was so fascinating. I have really learned so much, and I think I'll even be checking out my own LinkedIn profile now.
Thanks for the invite. Yeah, this was great. This was cool. Thanks for
Yes, and I will definitely be sharing the YouTube link and also with you, so you can share with your audience once it's been edited.
Awesome.